You can handle the struggle, push through hard seasons, and even expect setbacks. Then something starts going right and your mind starts to get weird. It freaks out a little bit. You second guess your success. You downplay it. You loosen up too fast. I think this happened a lot to me in the past. Maybe it's happened to you because a little progress shows up. Then somehow you start drifting back into what's familiar and falling back into old habits. And a lot of people think success should feel easy once it arrives. I've actually heard that some people fear success, because it feels more exposed than failure. Be careful what you wish for, right? Have you ever used that phrase? Failure, it feels known. You already have a language for it, right? You already know how to explain it. Where success, it asks something different of you. You ask to stay, you're asking yourself to stay with a new standard, a new identity, and a new level of responsibility, and that can freak you out. That's why progress can feel shaky right away, especially when I find it's like, wow, it should feel exciting. The life you say that you want to feel, it feels less normal than the life you have outgrown. So we're going to talk about that today in the podcast. And if you want help in making success feel steadier and become your standard instead of this fragile thing that might disappear, head over to talktoperry.com. I'll drop that in the lower third if you're watching on YouTube here. We can look at patterns that show up when things begin going well and you want to have a plan that just helps your habits, your mindset, and your identity support the progress that you're working for. That's over at talktoperry.com, just the way it sounds, Perry.com, right? All right, so one reason success feels harder to hold is that it brings attention. You start noticing it more. The more you notice, your own expectations begin to rise. And suddenly, it's not about getting started anymore. It's about maintaining. And that can feel super heavy, even during an early push. This happened to me when I finally, it might sound silly, but it wasn't until I was approaching the age of 40, big tipping point for me for whatever reason. It was about maybe a year and a half. I think I was 38 years old. And I was committed to doing this 90-day workout routine. Yet, I had tried that workout routine for a couple of years prior. And I'd get started and then, end up putting it on the shelf for some reason. So I was committed to it. I made the 90 days. My goal was to show up every straight 90 days. I put an X on the calendar every day I showed up, and I did it. Then I did this thing because I had really good success. I think I lost about 32 pounds, started looking good, clothing fit better, energy was great. There was success there. But I was like, ooh, I don't know. Can I maintain this? Can I go forward? And then I started doing what some people would call maintenance mode, where it's like, well, just exercise enough, just eat enough to maintain where you're at. You know what? That's a big escape hatch. It's like opening a door for old habits to come back in and sabotage yourself. I didn't know that at the time, but I was so grateful that I was aware that it was happening because I found this early success and my identity hadn't shifted. I hadn't looked at myself as somebody that was healthy, somebody that was in shape, somebody that shows up and does their exercise. I was a person that lost the weight and I need to maintain somehow. I got to hold on to this success. It's fragile. It might go away. And when things aren't working with your plan, it's easy to get familiar with failure, right? You blame the timing. You blame the plan. You blame your schedule. You blame the season that you're in. That's what I was doing. I was saying, oh, it's too late in life for me to even get started because I've let myself go for so long. You might even lack your motivation. But once progress starts showing up, a different question arises if you're paying attention. And you start saying, can I actually live like this now? That's where I was at. Can I actually live like this? Can I hold on to it? I got this great gift. Ugh, and that question for most people is really uncomfortable because it really touches identity. Not just the behavior, but it's just the strange comfort that you're like, oh my gosh, I used to be, somebody that was, would sit around. I wouldn't do exercise. I wouldn't show up and shop for healthy ingredients or healthy groceries, whatever. That was foreign to me. I didn't want to. I felt like by transitioning to this new identity, I'd be giving up something that I held on to so dearly. Where's the pizza? Where's the beer? Where's the Mountain Dew? And so I had to question that thing, because success, it asks you to stop rehearsing the same old struggle and becoming a person who can carry better results without freaking out and panicking. So that shift, it can show up in small ways. You lose a few pounds, and then you're like, oh my gosh, start eating like you've already crossed the finish line, right? It's like, oh my gosh, I lost 5 pounds. I can go out for burgers and pizza and have beer all week because look at the success I had. I can repeat that, but that cycle really is tough to break, because usually when you get off track with your eating, you don't necessarily gain back the weight that you just lost. You gain more, and you get frustrated, and you get angry, and you feel guilty, and then it becomes harder to get back to the point where you're almost at the break-even point. So even when you build a good routine, you stop respecting it because you think you've proved something. That was me at day 90. I proved something. I've arrived. This works. Now let's just take the foot off the gas for a bit. You can have a solid week and then pull back because you're still not trusting yourself for it to be real. Treating success like a season, it needs some structure to it. When things are going well, keep doing the boring basics that helped you get there. That was me. I began to realize old sneaky habits was coming back in. I'm like, time to course correct. Let's get back to what you know. Let's get back to what made this successful. Let's keep going with that habit, even though maybe it's not your identity yet. Let's create that identity. Now, I wasn't using that language at the time, but you start looking at things. What boring things? Protecting your sleep, starting your workouts and getting your workouts on the calendar, showing up and doing them, staying honest with your food, checking in with your mindset. Progress often slips when people start acting like support is no longer needed. I started checking in I had an online community that it was super simple. It was just kind of supporting each other, but we'd just check in with our workouts. I did this today, this worked, this didn't. But it was just this little accountability system that was uplifting. Here's another reframe. Success is not proof that the work is over. Oh boy, how many people do that? They get success and they think the work is over. They get in shape for the wedding. They get in shape for the vacation, the reunion, and then they've already got it in their mind that they're probably not going to keep it going. They're hopeful, but they don't take the actions. It's not proof that the work is over. It's proof that the work is working. That changes the tone. You stop seeing progress as failure, and you start, that you can lose in any minute, right? But you start seeing it as something that you can have support with through your repeated choices. So another idea that will really be helpful for you is to stop making success mean perfection. I think a lot of times people are like all or nothing, and they'll usually default to nothing because that's comfortable, that's familiar. The all stuff, oh my gosh, that's unrealistic. Success can feel harder to hold than failure because success asks you to become someone new. You know what? That's not a bad thing. I find it to be an invitation. You don't have to fear the good, the things that are starting to happen for you. You just need to learn how to live with it without looking away or looking back, you know, and without ignoring what's going on around you too. This is where next level begins to feel less like luck, and it just feels like more like home. You start making success become familiar. You've got this, my friend. I'd love to hear your top takeaway from today. Please drop those down in the comments. I absolutely appreciate those. I will reply. And as always, remember, it's never too late. We'll see you next week. That's another Power Blast podcast in the books. Thanks so much for tuning in. And remember, when you are ready to recharge your battery, make sure you go to talktoperry.com. That's talktoperry.com. That's Perry. And I want to listen. I want to hear, what's going on. I want to help you in that 15-minute call to recharge your battery and reclaim your power so that you're off and running and creating massive momentum toward your dream. Also, every day I am delivering more motivation, support, tips, and strategies inside my free community with amazing people like yourself. And we are conquering the mindset and the fitness. I do 52 weeks of free training in there. Plus, I coach and I mentor people, as well as give you access to tons of resources and guides. It's called my Upside Down Fitness community because we work on a lot of mindset stuff, the inside stuff. And we're a fun group of people striving to make healthier habits in this awesome chapter of life. So make sure you get in there. I promise you'll absolutely love it. Just head over to upsidedownfit.com and you can get into the group. And hey, you would be an awesome friend if you get over to iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcast and leave an honest rating and review for the Power Blast podcast. It helps awesome people like you find this show even faster, and that's who I'm looking for, awesome people like you. That's all I have for this week, my friend, and just to let you know, you absolutely rock. That's all I have for this week. I'll see you on the next Power Blast podcast, and always remember, it's never too late. We'll see you next week.